Hello, good evening. I hope you're all having a beautiful evening or morning. Or afternoon, could be all of those. I have to be careful when I have my hair down because it can go over the microphone. I don't know if it actually makes sound. If it does. So we shall begin. So we shall do our normal meditation. I'll just do a bit of an introduction to tell you how it works on the live stream. If you want to join a live stream, it's every Sunday at 6 p.m. French time, which is 12 noon in New York. I can't do the times off the top of my head. Just do New York, there's 6 hours difference. There's 5 p.m. in the UK. And just be conscious that we change time zones at different times of the year. No. We go backwards and forwards at different times in the year, so it's not always going to be the same as that. So you have to always check what time is 6 p.m. in France, in America, obviously in just spring and autumn for that. If you want to ask me a question, you do so through Skype. My Skype address is Lisa Cairns 12, which is in the box below. And you can just send me a request. And you can either write the question out or you can put call me. And don't put anything after call me so I can see that you want to be called, because calls take preference. I don't answer all the questions because, especially now that I do mostly calls, there's not enough time for it. So you have to try again the week after or get ready to call in. If you want to call in, make sure you've got a headset with a microphone and good internet connection. It's not always the case that you need that, but most of the time it is, and it's not the appropriate place to try it out on the live stream. It just makes my job harder. Well, not that much harder, but it's not so fair on everyone else to try it out on live stream. So it's best just to do that. Good internet connection, quiet place, and a headphone with a microphone. And then that's your best chances of us having a successful call. Yeah, please be open-minded to the idea that everything I say isn't truth, isn't fact, and I'm not recommending anything to you. Like, I'm talking about my own experience. I'm talking about what I've learned from years of working with people and doing this and reading and being involved in non-duality for like 20 years now. But it's not the way it is. Like sometimes because of where the idea of gurus come from and the idea of spiritualities come from, we then take that to other teachers and we look at the other teacher like a pedestal, like they know and I don't know, so what they're saying is truth. And there is nothing that can ever be truth. And from one thing that I know from working with people for many years is that one shoe doesn't fit all. It's different for everybody. So don't use this as a way to fix your life or to fix your career or to fix mental health issues or you've altered these types of things. Like non-duality is the freedom, but there is things in the flow in life, and there are people that are experts on this that you can talk with. My expertise is non-duality, and then also I work with the body and I work with the energetic experiences of emotions in the body and chakras. And I'm good at the insight into the connection between what we think, our actions, and what we feel in the body, and going deep into that. And then non-duality. But it's not like one thing fix all. We often like that, like the idea, I go and listen to this teacher and they can fix everything. So that's my little disclaimer. It's like, listen to what I say and use it as a springboard to grow and to evolve. But as soon as it becomes something that's pinning you down or closing you down, then you're misunderstanding it, or it's being used in the wrong way, or you're taking it to be some form of truth. I remember when I used to go and listen to Tony Parsons speak, I always used to love him saying, if you leave here with any extra ideas or any extra belief systems, then you completely missed the point. And that's not quite the same as what I'm saying, but I used to like it when he said that. What I'm saying is that, yes, that's true in regards to non-duality, and with all the other stuff, like, use it as a way to help the human grow, not as an excuse to avoid and to keep yourself small. Yes. Next on the agenda is talking about meditation. So for the first period, so the first like 20 minutes of the talk, I always like to sit in silence. And I always have done that, even when I do live talks. And it's actually, I just do it because it feels good to me to just sit there in silence, like you come on stage, if it's like talking to a live audience, or you come forward and you just sit there and you just take time to like relax into the sensations, into the body, into what's happening, and then speaking from there. But now I kind of name it a bit more for people to be able to think about. But that's actually the original reason I did it. And then latterly I began to call it meditation and suggested meditation techniques for people to do, because it could be beneficial to them on the human level. I don't believe it will lead you to enlightenment, because who would it lead to enlightenment? Who? And who's going to get enlightened? It's an idea that comes with the belief system that you are a separate entity that is experiencing a world and walking through a separate world, which isn't the truth. But it can help calm down dynamics in people. Normally it's all like busy, 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 go, 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 get, and just sitting still can have a profound effect. But not for everyone. Like I said, one shoe doesn't fit all. I've met many people where they've meditated and it's just exacerbate their mental hell. It's just given the mind the opportunity to like really go for it. So what am I recommending in doing this? I'm just not really recommending anything, but if it touches you, then the meditations, or you feel drawn to it, then go for it. And I really like sitting in silence, so we can do that together. And then at the same time, it's also God's will. Like if you meditate or not, it's whether God's will or life or oneness moves you to or not. And it's beautiful. Why not? Okay, I just have to move Khaleesi's bone. She decided to come in and drop a bone. I'm just going to move it so my partner doesn't step on it. What a dirty girl. Who's a dirty girl? Someone's a dirty girl. Ugh. Dirty girl. She's all proud of herself. Dirty girl is proud of herself. Okay, so here we go. So I shall ring a bell, and then when it's finished, I shall ring a bell as well. And I'm just going to open Skype now. Okay, we shall begin. So please tell me if there's a problem on the technical side, because there's a new thing appeared in OBS, and yeah, there's some sort of mistake happening, but I think it's okay. But if there is like sound problems, please tell me. Not if it's just getting stuck like internet problems, but if there's other intrusive sounds. I'm not sure if you can always tell if it's your side or my side. I meant like if you're having internet problems. But yeah, just tell me. So if there is a problem, I can try and fix it. So today is a very cool title. I just have to read it again. It is, Does Consciousness Remain After Death? It's an exciting title. But first of all, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my dyslexia, just a very short bit. I won't talk too much. And the reason I want to do that is last week, one of the people that called in, I've forgotten their name now, but a lovely lady, and I really enjoyed speaking with her, was trying to teach me how to say Osborne's name correctly. And as you can see, I've again reverted back to the old way of saying it, and I can't say the other way of saying it. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about my dyslexia, because I can imagine it can seem quite rude that I've known Osborne for like 6 or 7 years, I think, maybe, and I still can't pronounce his name properly. And I know often people comment a lot about English people or American people and how they don't put effort into other language names, and like it's a form of like colonialism and superiority, and I really get that. However, I just think that it might be slightly different for somebody that's dyslexic. I would just explain a little bit about my dyslexia. Everyone has different forms of dyslexia, and it's also like a spectrum, like autism. So you have it better and you have it worse. And it's like everything, it sort of slips out of the categories in some ways, but it's nice to have a title, because then people can kind of understand what you're talking about. But in the end, I mean, it's all just titles. So for me, my dyslexia is based around sounds and speech, spelling and reading, comprehending it being written on paper as opposed to someone telling me. So if someone is telling me information, I can see them, I can understand it a lot better than if I'm trying to read it on paper and comprehend it. So there's that. And I think sometimes it also affects me physically. But I think the predominant one is spelling, speech for me, and reading. So for me, when I was younger, I had to have speech therapy because I couldn't speak till I was really late. And I think it's something to do with that I hear sounds, but I can't necessarily reproduce that sound. And I can't necessarily remember that sound. And that might sound really weird to somebody whose brain does that naturally. But I can't really do that. So I might be able to remember the melody of a word, but I can't really pronounce the word. And I forget it. So it's not like I can just learn it for I can learn it for 1 week and then that's it done. If I don't get things into my like very long-term memory, then, and maybe if I don't repeat it again as well through my long-term memory, then it doesn't seem to stay. So I really should be a talking encyclopedia, but luckily for people around me, because of my dyslexia, and if I don't repeat words on a daily basis, then they just fly out of my head. Even though I can recognize them when someone else says them, I just can't remember how to say it. So you might notice it when I'm speaking, like sometimes I just blatantly admit that I can't remember how to say a word, but I'm pausing and stumbling. That's because in my mind, I go to say a word, but then I can just feel that I can't remember how to say it. So it's like, it sounds a bit like maybe I've got a stutter, but it's like apology. No, so there's this word that I know that I can't say. It's like impopuli. It sounds like apology, and I can feel it, but I just can't say it. What else is there? There is pitonology. Like I can't quite get it out, but I know what the word means and I can feel it. It's like I can feel the word and I get it, but I just can't say it. And it's not that I'm only going to remember words which are continuously in use. So it's funny. And it's covered up a lot by technology. I really can't spell. When I left school, I had a reading and writing age of an 8-year-old, and I really still can't spell and write very well, but because of the computer, I can get away with it. So I remember when I was like 16 years old, I went to write a check. We still did checks back then, and I couldn't spell 1,000 and 100 and pence. And so I asked the lady at the counter, and they all laughed at me and wouldn't help me. And like now I still can't spell those words. And that's like 24 years later. And it's not that I haven't learned that word. I have learned it again and again, but my brain just can't hold on to that. It's really like slippery. I think it also aided with awakening because my brain doesn't have this ability to hold on to language. I think it creates an open-mindedness, and I think it's got so many benefits. But it's like a really invisible, it's not really a disability. I see it as a superpower, but it's an invisible disability to the outside. So if I was autistic, even though autism is very hidden, I think that people would still be able to detect it. If I had a missing hand or missing leg or a limb or an injury, people could see it. But with dyslexia, people really can't see it. But it actually is continuous in my life. Like it's continuous. It's always having an impact on my life. So like the reason that I tell you this today, because I wanted to advertise Osborne's channel, and I could feel a little bit of fear come up around saying his name, because I knew that more than likely I wouldn't remember how I was taught last week, and everyone watched me being taught it. And so I thought, I've just got to speak about it and tell everybody. I know I bring it up lots, and I really let myself be seen as someone that can't read and has issues with reading and writing. But I can imagine as like somebody that I've known for a long time, and there's many of you that I've known for a long time, and I'm still pronouncing your name incorrectly. I'm so sorry. And I can imagine it feels rejecting and painful. So I just want to really clarify that if I could, I really would. But it's like, even if I spent all week learning your name, in 2 weeks' time, more than likely, I'm going to have learned your name. So it's like all these thousands of names that I know that I'm just going to have to keep repeating and have in my dialogue every day. I just can't do it. It's just, when you're dyslexic, you just have to decide what it is that you can and you can't do. Like there's just not enough hours in the day for that. And I just really don't think that it's something that I could possibly do, like invest in learning everybody's names properly. However, like know that my heart wants to, and I'm so sorry that happens. I imagine it's embarrassing. It's like, yeah, I can't imagine if people are like calling me like Lika for continuously for 7 years. I can imagine that that's so incomprehensible to outside of my brain chemistry. If you watch me in action every day, you'll really understand it. Like I've never met somebody in my life with dyslexia as bad as I have it. That's not meaning to be a sob story, but I've met so many people and I've never seen somebody affected in the same way that I am. So if you hear me saying that, like imagine if an autistic person said that, like they're on the spectrum and they said they've never met somebody that's as autistic as them. They wouldn't even be able to say it if they were that far in the spectrum. But it's not minor, my dyslexia. When I was a kid, I had to go for loads of testings because they found it so weird what was happening with me. And I remember lots of times in hospitals with lots of things on my brain. I couldn't really speak when I was younger, and then I couldn't really read and write until 8 and 9 years old, and that was still very limited reading and writing, and that's very weird in England. Like, we start reading and writing very young. Although in other countries they don't start it till 7. They actually start it quite young. Yeah, and I used to have to wear special glasses, and I did all types of tests, and in the end they were like, well, we'll just name her dyslexic. We don't really know what's going on there, but it's very severe. So yeah, so my apologies, Osborne, and I'm so sorry that I'm not saying your name correctly after all these years. But then saying that, he does something really beautiful for everybody. He runs a channel, and he runs a few channels, and he edits talks of people that speak about non-duality, and I'm one of those teachers that do that. And if you want to subscribe to his channel, so it's called Lisa Cairns Video Clips, and he edits the clips. He puts them in titles and playlists, and it's really beautiful what he does. And I really wish I could say your name, and I'm so sorry for all the times that I've said it wrong. But I'm just going to stay with attempting to say everybody's name, and just hope that people can understand that, even though it's like so invisible to you and so hard to imagine. Yeah. Yes. And I just thank everybody that has understood that and stuck with it and not taken it personally. Maybe I should just start calling myself a different name to sympathize. I'm now called Lika. But then I'll forget what I'm called. Next time I'll be like Ika, Tika, teacup. I'm a teacup. I can remember that. Yeah. Okay. So now we shall start with a really great title, an exciting title. Does consciousness remain after death? That's so explosive, that title. It's so explosive. That can be answered in so many different ways. So Well, I don't even know where to start. Like, in the end, we don't know. Like, so, yeah, we don't know anything really. We're just here. It's just a happening. This is happening. And we don't really know what happens at death. I have my theories about what happens at death, but they're my theories, and then they're coming through my collection of words put together that create some sort of meaning, but they're not a truth. Pardon me. So to me, what happens in physical death, this is what I feel happens, because I feel like I've died many times in life. So I feel like I know what happens, but I haven't obviously physically died yet. But it could be that I have died billions of times before. Like, in a way, that's true as well because of past lives. But for me, what I feel happens is that in the moment of death, what all objects begin to be taken away or begin to disappear. So the world begins to disappear, the smells begin to disappear, the taste begins to disappear, your memories begin to disappear, your ideas, your imaginations, your titles, your worries, your stresses, feelings, the emotional body, physical sensation, the room, others. Everything gets further and further away. And as that gets further and further away, there will be a moment of intense fear where there is something that wants to scramble back and hold on to those things. And then that intense fear is seen to just be a fear. I suppose, I don't know, what happens here is that fear is just seen to be like a physiological reaction that happens, like the body is designed to stay alive, so there is this moment of fear that appears, and it's either believed or not believed. So there is either a belief that there's something really scary or not scary happening, so that comes and it's really seen as not scary, and then that passes and everything gets further and further away, and what's left is this love, this bliss of who you are, and this empty watching. So it's this love and empty watching. And that's also what happens when you die in this life as well. Like, so when you die when the body is still physically alive. Now then, after that point, when that's happened, it could be that then life goes into the non-expression of everything. So then it would go into a state of rest or nothingness, absolute nothingness, or it manifests again, or it just stays in that state of watching. And none of it's an issue, because if everything disappears, so if it goes into a state of nothingness, which can't really happen because it doesn't exist, there's nobody there that worries about it. If it stays in love and bliss, there's no one there that worries about it. That is perfect. And then if it manifests again as your true essence, none of it matters, whether it does or doesn't. So that's, to me, what happens in spiritual death. And so that's what I presume, and what feels really true, will happen in physical death. And some people feel like you go into other realms if you don't go past that fear, but I don't know any of that. Could be. It's interesting. These different realms of hell or something, or attachment. So it's like if you don't let go, then you go into a realm. You could actually see that as what's happening in life. So you have these like mini awakening experiences where you don't drop into that love, and then you come back to being alive or being someone. And then maybe what manifests then is that attachment, like any more attachments that happen. And then that might be what the Buddhists mean about these different realms. So to me, the losing of self is all about detachment to the person. So it's not about the human feeling pleasure and pain as such, but it's the attachment to that pleasure and pain, and that attachment to subject-object. So who you are is this vast emptiness that's watching, that is pure love, this bigness. And then it sort of gets zoomed in and focused in and attached to the person. So then this consciousness is not a thought and it's not a memory. So it's not like consciousness can remember itself, because it is just itself. So it's not like, oh, I've got involved in the person, I am consciousness. That's something that happens in the human world. Consciousness is just looking. It's just that in the world of looking, so in the world of appearances, there is something that's arisen in the human that kind of owns that consciousness and says, I am conscious. Like that belongs to me. And then that consciousness seemingly becomes like entrapped in that human world. But really, if you really examine your experience, even when there's identification, like energetic identification with the person, your essence as consciousness is still totally expanded in all things. It's just that the person now maybe has too many beliefs or too many attachments, and so it's too dense for that to be seen. So it's like if you imagine like what I was saying about what happens in death, that you have like all things begin to get further and further away. Like that's what happens in awakening, is that it's not the person that becomes detached, it's just that the consciousness becomes separated from that person. So when it's identified, they're like both tightly bound together. But in that moment of awakening, it's like all those attachments become further away or like less big. So they take up less room, and then it's just known that what you actually are is this looking, which is all things. You are everything, your life, which is love. It's so beautiful, this subject. I love this subject. How could everybody not be like totally in love with it? And the mechanism that happens in the human, once it feels out of contact with who it truly is seeking, because it's terrifying being a singular object in relationship to this world. Even though it's not really obviously terrifying, it's like on a deep level, there is an element of terror to it, because you are then vulnerable to this world. You're vulnerable to being eaten by this world. So it's like it creates this intensity in the human. So then the pleasures through time become extra important, because you project onto the pleasures that they're going to bring you back to that deep rest. Like you'll get a big enough house, you'll get enough money, and then you can relax. You'll have your kids, then you can relax. You'll finish your next work, then you can relax. You'll do your tax returns, then you can relax. You'll buy a new table, then you can relax. And it never happens. You never really get to that moment of relaxedness. Maybe there's moments where you feel like, I've done it. but it really doesn't really ever get to that point where you just feel contented in being here. And that's because there is the identification, there is this seed of feeling like there's something wrong here, there is something not quite right, which is true because your essence is free, your essence is empty. Like there is this deep connection to life and this deep knowing that there's nothing really bad that can happen to you. But it doesn't mean that the body doesn't stop feeling things. This is where the person is already getting confused. Like the body is meant to have fear, but it's the attachment to the fear that makes it really awful and makes it linger. That the body is meant to have jealousy, but the body is meant to have anger. The body is meant to have frustration. It's meant to have joy. It's meant to have pleasure. It's meant to have sexuality. All these things. It's meant to be conditioned. And it's not the conditioning that's the problem, even though we often like smooth out the conditioning to make it thinner. That's not the actual problem. The problem is that there is some identification, the glue, where it's like you feel like you're conscious rather than it being the other way around. Who you are is consciousness, and in that's appearing a person. So beautiful. And this is a really different way of being than being like the consciousness that person believes it's conscious. It's really different. But it's so many years now I'm beginning to forget, but it is really different. Like having this deep sense of rest and this energetic expansion. And it changes like your brain. Like it makes your brain more empty or something. Everything's passing through quicker. You're not holding on to things. That your memory is less like running the story of you. There needs to be a story of the character running at points in order to function. There needs to be functioning. But it's yeah, there's something like it kind of gives me the feeling often like I'm a bit stoned. Nice way. But it's like my brain can't really hold on to things properly. And throughout the day there can be like more closeness to the human and less closeness to the human. I know that sounds weird, but you can become totally unidentified, but in that place you can't function. So to me, I might be wrong about that, but to me, you can't function with absolute disidentification. You become like a baby or like an idiot. Oh, sorry, that's a bit rude to say, like an idiot. I mean, like you become unable to function. Like you need to have some identification with the body in order to function. That consciousness needs to be in some way connected to the particular object it's looking through in order to function. And to me, that feels like it is like it comes closer to the person and then less close. I don't feel like there's seeking here in this body anymore, but I do notice there's old patterns of seeking, so old ways of responding to things. Like, yeah, I'm not sure if I can think of something now, but it's like your body has been so used to doing certain things for so many years that it has a like, you know how wolves run when they have an enclosure, they make a path in which they pace around every day. It's like that's the same for the person. So you got these patterns and these ways of behavior, and it changes your conditioning, but it's not like it making the human perfect. Like I still have childhood traumas in this body. Like I can still get activated into not speaking up and then speaking up too much or something like that, like these old ways of being. But they become a lot more distant and a lot more impersonal. But they still are there. And it's really important. Like in the beginning, I couldn't really perceive that they were still there. I could and couldn't. Like sometimes throughout the day, if like, it's also the same, like if you're so much into consciousness, you can't really perceive the details of the body, but they are still there, and your body is still functioning through that conditioning of, like it has to perform through conditioning. So that was my dyslexia there, which is most probably also affected by the awakening, because the awakening certainly did something to my memory and to my language as well, like the attachment and I think that there's also been like experiments on people with the brain, and they believe it's like identification, or not identification, the creation of the self is connected to the memory. And so if you're not so identified with the person, then you're not using that area of the memory so much, which then adds to my dyslexia. Like I honestly think my dyslexia is a superpower. Like somebody recently suggested a technique where I could use to try and get rid of my dyslexia. And I'm not sure I would choose to. Like, even though it creates difficulties for me in my functioning everyday life, I also seriously think that it made me very open-minded and susceptible to awakening, because my brain just can't really hold on to words and language and meaning very well. But it also makes me rubbish at certain things as well. So I don't know if I would choose the button to, I mean, it'd be lovely to just be able to spell and read properly, and do grammar and all these things. But I also think in images, like, so even in there, when I was talking about grammar, I was imagining grammar on a piece of paper and somebody's hand and a pencil. And then when I was talking about dyslexia, I was imagining myself and my old dyslexic teacher. It's funny, isn't it, the way we think? Yeah. And so what happens in physical death, I assume, is as your brain is shutting down, that functioning, which is creating the attachment to the separate self, there's nothing wrong with the separate self, it's the attachment to it. We need a separate self. We need an ego, believe it or not. Otherwise you'll just be like, Lisa, would you like a cup of tea? Would you like to go to the toilet? Would you like to raise your left hand? Yes, there's nothing. What was I saying? I can't even remember. Also, my memory is just shocking. Sometimes, like the other morning, I did a session, and I wasn't, at the end of the session, I wasn't sure that I was actually coherent, I wasn't sure that I was fully, I think at times, I was really forgetting what I was talking about and just kind of like, and then changing subject. I don't think that they would have really noticed. But could be, like afterwards I was a bit like, I was really incoherent today. Yeah. forgot what I was talking about. My apologies. What am I going to blame now? Dyslexia, awakening, Khaleesi. It's to do with Khaleesi. It's because I'm a woman and I need to go pee-pee all the time, which is true. I do need to go pee-pee, but I can't be bothered to get up. Okay, so we just move on. So in death, that's what I was talking about. In death, as the brain begins to stop functioning, there is something that happens which disidentifies with the consciousness, and then the consciousness is coming to the forefront, and the objects are going and disappearing into that consciousness. That's what I assume happens. Oh gosh, pardon me. Okay, we're at 7 p.m. We can now take some questions. Osborne's put beautiful about death. Thanks. Osbjorn. I can see his name written. Maybe that's correct, but Osborne, he puts the English version as well. Thank you for being so understanding. I changed my name to Osborne because it's easier for everyone to say. It's totally okay, no problem. Beautiful about death, thank you. Oh, thanks, Osborne. I'm so terrible. I'm Ika now. Ika. Okay, we got some coomies. Yes, Rob. Just send him a message so he doesn't get shocked. Yeah, so just put call me and then nothing after the call me. Hey, Isabel. Oh, nice picture, danke. Yes, okay. Oh no, that was me that put the yes. Hello.
Whoops.
Hello. Hello? I just heard you go whoops.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, Rob.
Hi, whatever your name is.
My name is now Ika.
No, it's not.
I'm Ika. Oh, nice to hear from you, Rob. Yeah, I know, but we've got very simple names, Rob and Lisa.
I know. You get my name right all the time. There must be something wrong with it.
It's just got 3 letters in it. I'm not sure about your last name, how you say that one. Moffat.
Oh, let's forget that.
Yeah.
Let's forget about that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say it out loud on the YouTube.
Oh, no. That's terrible. Hey, I don't know. I'm feeling a bit shy talking to you today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I could go into a great old spiel about the amazing experiences I've had and that, but I'm here to, and I'm not quite sure of the question I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I just love you.
Oh,
I just love
thanks, Rob.
you, and
Oh, I
yeah,
love
with
you
your
too.
yeah, and dyslexia is, the gift of dyslexia. My son, has had the label dyslexia, and I've had it to a very small extent, but and it's such freedom hearing you, I don't know, it's just such, I think, yeah, it is such a gift.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I don't know if I'd have always found it that, when I was a teenager and stuff. but I think I had really good dyslexic teachers. I had some really terrible teachers, but I often had a one-to-one dyslexic teacher. My parents would pay for me to have like this private dyslexic teacher. And I think they were really, really kind with helping me accept it. Because I think like the worst thing for a dyslexic person is when they fight it. You know, like I really try to battle it. I mean, you can work with it and you can help improve the situation. But if you really like fight it and don't want it and are really ashamed of it, then it's just going to be so many more problems. And I think that I think what they must have done, I mean, they spent many years working with me, is spent a lot of time like teaching me to appreciate it. And that's really beautiful. They did that. I had some really, really kind dyslexic teachers that were very understanding and very sweet, and kind of like tried to spend that time just working on my strengths and working on a way in which was accessible for me.
Yeah.
But there were times in like teenage years, it was so, and childhood, so humiliating. Like the teacher forcing you to read in front of people. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I interrupted you. The burn of not being able to understand something or do something while someone sits there and waits for you to get it without saying a thing, you know, and it's just like, it's just like torture. I know, it's so weird.
it really is like if we, that basically sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes what the education system is like for a dyslexic, it's a bit like, and maybe this is a wrong comparison, maybe I haven't thought it through it enough, but it is maybe like somebody not having a leg, and then they every day or in certain classes are expected, so everybody else is allowed to run the race, but they're expected without any help to complete the race, but like just with one leg. But nobody else can see that they've only got one leg. Like and because it is a really different way of learning, and it's a different way of seeing the world, and it is, you can teach, like a dyslexic can learn and have really high intelligence, be so capable, but they need a different form of teaching. Like, I mean, it's terrible, like making a kid read out aloud, like a dyslexic read out aloud who can't really read. Everyone else is like reading like encyclopedias, and you're still on like Roger Red Hat. Roger Red Hat had a red hat. Everyone else is reading like Jane Austen. Roger Red Hat had a red hat.
Yeah. Whoa.
That then had a spell it out, Lisa, spell it out. Sounds like hat. Cat. Why would they do that? That's so funny though. But I mean, everyone that's dyslexic, or even people that were slow with reading, can understand that.
I bet there's a lot of people listening, you know, who, it's kind of brutal. Like I've got this thing with my mum when cutting a roast, you know, like a bit of beef roast, like this triangular bit of roast, and she says, just cut it across. This is when I was, you know, I don't know, just cut it across the grain, Rob. You know, and I still don't know this day how to do that. And it's just like it just builds up such a thing. But it's
pressure.
Pressure.
Like you're then like you come to cutting the meat, and you're like, how many ways can I avoid of cutting the meat?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, God, you know, it's like, and it's that pregnant pause, you know, like can't you see it? Isn't it obvious? You know, it's that terrible thing after the. Am I saying that? Yeah, because luckily I'd had a look at it myself. You know, like my writing was like at university. All I did before the exam was practice that I could write quickly, and then I just wrote like 2 or 3 lines for each point. You know, I had to write essays in the sciences and stuff, and all I did was just try and write as quickly as I could. I didn't think about what the points were or anything like that, and I remember seeing a girl's and well, she had so much time in the exams that she could underline everything, he stuff like that, and all I was writing. But my son, my amazing son, he he went to university, which I never thought he would ever do. And there's like this design school of design here in Wellington, New Zealand, and it's like super pressure. It's like the worst thing. It's the worst way you could learn. They start with 250 and they get down to 50, and
Oh.
basically they just overload them until people break down and can't do it. And I've got another mate whose son went through it, and it's taken years to recover.
Mm.
I was completely, I didn't know how to help my son at that time, and he ended up getting one off the highest mark, of the
Oh,
whole,
nice. Yeah.
and he was allowed to, they allowed him to do some things with,
Yeah.
without having to write it, and
Yeah.
all that sort of, they helped him out a bit like that, but.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible journey for a young person,
Yeah.
and the industry, the industry that he would be in, there's nothing like that at all. It doesn't even work like that. So it's just so horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has he finished it now?
Yeah, he's finished it, and he's finished it. I don't know. Part of me is just wondering when some of that crap's going to have to come out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
He
totally. Yeah.
But he's learnt so much. He's learnt, he's right into his. I was super sporty, and it just wasn't his thing. And now he's like, Jesus, like me with my ass hanging out. He does all these amazing mountain bike rides and runs in the mountains, and he's nature, and we share a love of the outdoors and fishing and stuff, and
Yeah.
he just because the work that they do here in Wellington, it's I don't know if you know, it's the capital of New Zealand. It's all government, all government, and all the offices are just like it's not very healthy environment really,
Yeah.
and he's sort of working in that in the moment. But yeah, so the skills he's learned are incredible. But
Yeah.
he's happy. He's happy.
Yeah, and often people that have dyslexia and have been through the education system, they're very resourceful. So you have to find ways around it, and I can't even tell you my ways of finding my way around things. But so say if it doesn't happen now because we got our phones, but like 20 years ago when we didn't have the phones, or 15 years ago, I had to find ways in order to be able to spell or read out in public, when I didn't have my resources or I didn't have someone that could help me, and ways in which I could explain it to people, or I could get help, or I could do these things. And so you become really resourceful, and you become actually really confident. And I feel like in some ways that failing so much gave me confidence, because everyone always expected me to fail, and I got it kind of gave me some form of confidence. It did the opposite way round. It was yeah, I've been the worst, the worst of the worst. I've literally had people laughing at me, I've really constantly and so then it kind of one of the biggest struggles in life is people's fear of failure. But I kind of did that very young. I burnt a lot of that stuff off. I had to deal with it. I had to find a way to process that and not they let it take me down.
Yeah.
And then so now I notice that I don't really, I think it's also to do with awakening, but also before that, I'm quite not so precious about things, about people seeing me fail. I don't mind so much. It's okay. It's embarrassing sometimes, and yeah, it depends, I suppose, what you fail in. But often I can see that I can put myself out there. There's so many great things to having that. Like it's a great learning lesson, but it's also, I suppose, like the attitude in which you take it with, because I can also see that it could break some people if they don't take it in the right attitude. It's the same with, like, if either of us now lost an arm or a leg, like you could have the attitude of, this is going to be a gift and this is going to be something that helps me grow and expand, or this is like the worst thing that's happened to me, and constantly moaning and bitching about it inside your head, and then it takes you down.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's well, I said, yeah. It's certainly it's just a great thing, and it's a great thing. It's it's one of your wonderful things. Um,
Thanks, Rob.
well, it allows such freedom for the people who talk to you. Yeah, because everyone's got their stuff, and to see you just dinker your way through, So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very cool. So I've got something now, which is great. I took my lovely daughter to a midi course,
Oh, what?
and
Sorry.
um, um, in my I'm going to say it again.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Miri. I'm going to say Miri course, which is like a traditional Maori healing
Yeah. Oh, nice.
course. Yeah, for 2 days, and just recently, and it's well, how can I describe it? It's the divine, and it was so amazing for me to see a complete, or not a completely different, but exactly the same as, if you want to talk about non-duality, but presented with different names and gods, and it was an amazing thing, and I felt there was just a strange shift in me when I was on the course, and I've been doing a whole lot of random things since. Um, yeah, I've been doing a whole lot of random things. Like the other night, I just walked into the New Zealand bush in the dark, and I've done with no torch or no nothing, and it's quite dangerous. Not with animals, thank goodness, but fall off the track or walking,
Yeah.
whatever. And I've done any number of um, like laughing completely out loud at the movies yesterday, in this quiet. This quiet. It was such a touching story. It was Mother's Day here. Is it Mother's Day all around the world, or is it just?
I think it's in
Do you
most
have?
places, but England. England's Mother's Day is in March. I think it is in America, it is in Germany.
Oh, it's in New Zealand yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, yesterday. I think it's today. Funny, isn't it?
Oh
All
man,
different.
yeah. Well, you're four
Oh,
o'clock in the morning for me now.
oh,
It's so
sorry. Oh, yeah,
random.
yesterday. It was a Sunday for you. Yeah. You're now the next day.
Yeah, and it's four, and you came on at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I
Oh,
just
wow.
random turned. I'm in a caravan at the moment. This caravan because I rent out my place when I don't have my kids, so I move out and come and stay in this awesome caravan. It's so fantastic. And yeah, I was just thinking, oh man, I listened to Lisa this morning, but I think it'll either be 5 o'clock New Zealand in the morning or 6 o'clock. But I went, oh, I'm just going to turn it on now, and boom, there it was. You just started, So I guess I'm experiencing that flow of amazing things. And the conflict, or the thing I wanted to give to you was the I wanted to give to you. There's you've had a look at Wim Hof, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I've had a look at Wim Hof, and have you had a look at this person called Joe Dispenza?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a. So I'm not going to talk. It's a breathing, and it's a divine practice. It seems so aligned with non-duality. Spoken by an American guy, and when he gets interviewed, you all get this real sort of excited energy. That sort of, I don't know, there's something yucky about the energy. But he does these guided sort of meditations and stuff like that. And he's taken the way of science, science explaining, what happens in the body, how when you're in a divine state, when let's say you're connected with a higher being, or I don't know what, in love or whatever, and he's measured, he's measured all the body's reactions and all how it works, and he brings up the energy from the chakras up into the thing. That's enough about that. And I was, yeah, and I'm so, I've got this. I have to breathe in during the day when I wanted to share that with you, and I was going to ring you up and ask you, or not ring you, but email you and see if you'd be open to listening to like an hour-long thing with me, because I feel like I don't know the truth. I don't know whether I'm getting sucked into. It sounds so like what you talk about or what is here, and along with this typical healing course and that, like I feel like you might remember, I've had a struggle with sort of basically poisoning myself by eating junk food, all that sort of stuff, and for the last, I don't know, 4 days, it's like that whole thing has just disappeared, and I'm eating like nothing but the most beautiful, nourishing food. I'm not poisoning myself anymore, and it's yeah. I guess there's
Yeah,
still
I
some.
would be happy. I would be happy to listen to it. I can't say that I'll listen for the whole hour, but you can send it over and I'll listen to bits of it. And
Oh well. What I wondered, because that was my other question, is would you listen to? Could we listen to it together? I could just pause it or something like that, or is that like Is that a technological?
I think you can do that through Zoom. You can share, but maybe it's best to email me about this because everybody else is listening. Like so, and not, but they're like expecting to talk about non-duality. So it's better that maybe you email and
Yeah.
ask me about that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, I think you can do those sorts of things like share it through Zoom and stuff. But you can look into that, or you can email me and we can work something out.
Yeah, and that brought me to the collective. Seemed to be like a. What's your feeling about? I've done virtually all my spiritual. I don't want to call it that, but whatever, blah, by myself. And when I was on, is there like a collective um, power, or
I don't know if there's a collective power. one thing I'll just say, or two things that just come into my mind when you say that, is that, like, one thing that I notice is that if there's something in vogue in society, so say like yellow is becoming in vogue in society, without even seeing the advertisements, like my mind will begin to think of that color. And so I feel like we're communicating telepathically with each other, like energetically or something. So there is this like if people are focused on something. Another thing that I notice is that, like, with my booking system for my online sessions, I can only take 3 bookings a day because that's as much as I can do, but I have to open it up for the whole day. So if I'm not conscious, then 10 people could book for that day. So I have to shut it down quickly when people have booked. But what I notice is that people book all together. So it's like I might not have any booking for 2 weeks, and then suddenly everyone will book together. And it's not that it's just after my talk or something. It could be that somebody's advertising me somewhere and then the booking comes. But sometimes it's like regular people that I regularly see, so it's unlikely that they're going to have been advertised to. And I feel like it's an energetic thing. Like we're picking up on each other energetically. And when people are focusing on something, then it brings the attention of other people focusing to it. Another thing I notice happening is that I'll think about somebody and then they'll book a session. So it sounds like I'm controlling them, but I feel like we are. I don't think it's just me. I think all of us are connected, like a little bit like ants. So you know how ants, they communicate through smell, they communicate through vibration. And I'm sure we're doing that, like on a non-verbal level, not just sight as well, not looking, but on something where we're in different rooms and we're picking up each other's energies and each other's feelings. So I feel like as people get more and more into non-duality, it'll be like a snowball effect. There's also another theory called memes. I forget who made that up. They're Richard or somebody Dorking, and another lady called Suzanne something at Oxford University. This idea of memes, that ideas become something, they call it like the ideas become these things like memes. And it's like the idea of genes. You know how genes are trying to propagate themselves, so they're trying to breed, so they get bigger and bigger and bigger and grow. And they have this about ideas, that, so say the idea of God, it's like all ideas, like everything else, want to grow. So it's really interesting. Like there's a whole philosophy around it. You have to read it, but it's the intelligence wants to grow, or the information wants to grow. So the information is attracted to itself and attracted to expanding as well. So there's all these different things, and I don't really know how it's working on the human level, and I don't know if anyone could, because it's way more complicated than we could think. But there does seem to be some power in the collective. I also notice when I hold meditations or when I hold talks, like if there is more light energy in the room, so people are more free in the room, then it can penetrate everybody else, so it can pick the whole energy up in the room. But it equally works as the other way. If there's more darkness in the room, then that will then tumble everyone over. And I see it. I can tell that there's too much darkness in the room, and I can see people like falling over. Like when I mean darkness, I mean like difficult suffering energy. And it's like then the whole room, and I feel like I have to work really hard to like try and like pick people up when that begins to happen. But sometimes you go into a room and there's enough people with open energy that it kind of is infectious and it infects everybody else.
Yeah,
and
that was really my question. Was that because I feel like I want to share I want to a shared experience when I'm because what opened it, I was on a fasting retreat, and there was lots of people and no one, and I've been looking at the Tao Te Ching, and they said some of them were, a couple of ladies were interested, so actually I was just sitting in a room listening to it, and they came in, and having them in the room, I it became super intense for me. I started crying. It's the truths of, and they were just sitting there, and I wondered whether that was because I've done everything myself,
Yeah.
everything, everything.
There is like a group energy that comes about, and it is, we are collective animals on the human, not collective animals, we are community animals on the human level, and there's so much more to our interaction than what can be perceived. So I'd say that. I would also say about doing it by yourself is that also like a personality trait. So sometimes we develop like certain personality traits where, like, there could be the personality trait of feeling like you're your own island and therefore always wanting to do things yourself, or tending to rely less on other people. So you are more your own island, and so then getting into this subject, it's more like maybe you learn from other people, but you keep it like a bit of a solo expedition, because there is a personality trait to be solo, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just noticing it, like that there might be that. But really, I feel like deep down what humans want at the end is human connection. So I sometimes think that if you have that tendency, it's maybe sometimes more of a defense than it is like your true calling, because I feel like all of us have connection and intimacy needs on the human level. Like, we aren't a tiger. We're a community-based organism or animal, or whatever you want to call us, human being, where we survive together, we survive in a group. And it's only like the last 1,000 years, particularly the last couple of 100 years, where we've become more and more solo. And I don't think that it's so natural. I think our tendency is to want to be together, but we don't always know how to be together, because we're not really taught very good communication techniques, and we don't really know how to communicate as groups. And so what we do is we tend to avoid each other, whereas really deep down we want connection, we want love, we want intimacy, we want community, we want security, we want safety. And so that's what I would just say. Like, when I hear people that tend to do the spiritual process by themselves, it's really beautiful, and it can be really intense, and you can have massive changes, but also it sometimes can be your go-to defense mechanism to be away from humans, because on some level there is a lack of trust with your ability to deal with humans or with the other person.
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes like going in and exploring that, like exploring your intimacy and your attachment and your ability to define yourself in front of other people. Like, when I say define yourself, I mean another word, but I can't say it, so I'm just compromising. But differentiate. So your ability to be able to define yourself from what the other person wants or what the other person needs. So in that moment when those people came in, it might be that what you needed was a hug, or what you needed was for them to leave, but you found their energy overtook you and you didn't know how to navigate that or something. But it could be all types of things. Like, I'm just throwing things out there.
Yeah, no, you've really hit the nail on the head there.
So sometimes going towards a group, not only for the collective energy of the group, which it can be a beautiful thing, but it's also like then learning more about like what projections or ideas or defenses come up in you in the group. What do you, like somebody said to me the other day in a session, and I thought this was such a great way to describe it. Somebody had said it to them, is that take your intimate relationship, your most intimate relationship you've had, like romantic relationship, and look at your tendencies in romantic relationships, and that is how you would deal with the whole of your life. Like, it will be the way that you deal with your home, it will be the way that you deal with the table, the chair, timeline, your taxes. And the reason that is because we're always relationship is a way of being. We're always relating to an object, and so our habit of relating will always appear the same, if you see what I mean, even if it is with an inanimate object.
Yeah, I absolutely. Relationship is one of those, like God, one of those words that
Yeah,
is
but that's the way
deadly.
we'll do with everything. So if you're avoidant in relationship, then you'll be avoidant in other areas. But it might be easier in other areas, because if you avoid, say, washing up or something, then the unwashed up dishes won't argue with you.
Yeah.
Like, so
Funny you should say that. I've got my sink in the caravan is full of unwashed dishes right now.
yeah.
because I've lost. We've had some. It's off the grid where I am, so I've got no power except for, and it's run out. So
Yeah.
no power means no water, means no lights, means no nothing. But yeah, no, that's so. And I played team sports, and
Yeah.
I loved it. And there's an incredible when a rugby team is like it doesn't happen often, but when the collective, I always
Yeah.
said, like, it's individual. It's an individual game, no doubt. If you don't punch that guy, or you don't tackle that guy, you don't do your bit. And everyone said, "Oh, it's a team sport. It's a team sport." Every now and again, it was, but I I go to some group things, and as soon as they say the word tribe and stuff, I just feel like saying, "Oh, fuck," fuck up.
What do you mean? What does that mean? Like back up? Like too much?
Oh, it just means like, yeah, it's like I don't want to be like everyone else.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want to, I've had this thing where if someone suggests I do something, like probably the earliest thing, I had a really messy room at university, and I had a girlfriend. She came round and she'd come round, and that, and then one time she said to me, "Oh, Rob, would you mind cleaning up your room a bit?" Because it was like, I had an apple core growing. It was growing mold, out of the carpet and stuff, because it was one of those student flats, which was like, it was like never got any sun. It was just like, and it was, and as soon as she said that to me, I said, "Oh, hey, that's it, see you later."
Yeah. And that's so interesting, because that most probably will be like a deep schema in you. And I'm just going to theorize, like if we were in a one-to-one session, I would go more into like your thoughts and your feelings, but just because I'm doing a talk, I'll just theorize about why something like
Boring
that could,
everyone.
huh? So,
We're boring everyone.
yeah, yeah, I don't know about that. But so if I theorize, like, so that idea like could come from say like over dominant parents or under dominant parents, or like a trauma. There could have been something which traumatized you when somebody said you've got to do this, you've got to do this, and then something really bad happened when you did it. There could be so many reasons, but it also could be that you had like too many rights taken away as a child. Or another reason could be that you saw other people's ideas as unsafe. So you saw other people as unsafe, you saw their ideas as incompetent or unsafe, and then therefore you rejected other people's ideas. So you became like your own island. There could be so many different reasons, and I'm not saying that is why you're doing it. I'm just giving a theory as to why that happened. But then when we make up these conclusions, they don't present themselves as conscious, as something conscious that we can see. So when that girlfriend came around and said that to you, you just felt like you didn't like the girlfriend. You're like, bye-bye.
Yeah, man.
And then that happens the same with like teachers. So if a teacher is too prescriptive, then or too domineering or too pushy in some way, then it's like bye-bye, and you push them away, and you think it's something to do with them. The same with, it could be a piece of furniture could do that. I know that sounds really weird, but it could dominate the room, or it could look domineering, and then we think we don't like it because it's our personality and we like certain things, but it's actually because you see that object as domineering or as taking over or as infringing on something of yours, whatever the idea is. And this is where that statement where they said, take your relationship and look at your relationships, and that's how you'll relate with everything in your life, because your job is a relationship, your work is a relationship, your environment is a relationship. Because the way that we function as humans is subject-object. I am a subject in relationship to that object, no matter who it is that you're relating to. And we learn these relationship skills in really early and young in life. So we learn them in the first 6 years, like our tendencies of how we relate. We can train them. But it'll be the same way you see a tree. So if a tree is infringing too much on you, if you see it in the same light, and you won't even notice it, like a feeling will appear that's a similar feeling to that girlfriend telling you to clean your room, just looking at a tree, and then you'll think you don't like the tree, whereas actually that's not really what's happening. And we're doing it all the time. Like, I'm doing it, everybody's doing it. We have these judgments inside of us, and they're so subtle. And we think this is a personality. We think this is I. Maybe not us here listening to this talk, but most people in society think that their likes and their not likes is who they are, that forms them. Whereas really, we're like these machines that are just responding and forming new likes and not likes that are all dependent on something that came from the past. It's beautiful. And what we are is that solid looking that never changes. And you can see how that relates to the law of attraction, because the way in which you look at the tree or look at your environment is going to define what you bring in and what you reject from your environment, even though it's completely impersonal. Sorry, I interrupted you again, Rob.
No, you didn't. You didn't at all.
It's so beautiful, because every way you look, if you look in the timeline or if you look right here, everything is oneness. So everything you're picking and you're choosing now is dependent on everything that came before. It's not a soul or a singular entity that is having free will and making choice. It's total love. So everything is innocent. Everybody is innocent. There is nobody that's guilty. There is life happening. There is meant to be guilt to an extent in the human body, because we're meant to, not eat our best friend. We're meant to not just take and steal from everyone else. Like, we live as a community. Like, we have all these emotions and they're important, but they're not actually you. They're very impersonal. They're just a functioning happening. Who you are is this spaciousness, is this infinite nature, this expansion. I'm sorry for burping after saying that. It was so beautiful, and then burp. Sorry. I don't even see me as saying something that's so beautiful in that. So I often say that's so beautiful, but I see it as like love expressing itself, and I don't see it as my words at all. At all.
No, I get that. It's just like I get that when I think, hopefully, I imagine other people get that as well.
Depends if I trigger the positive response or the negative response. So if they've had a mother like me that they didn't like, or they had someone at school that traumatized them like me, then that will easily go into she's a narcissist. She's out to grab all the power from her, it'll go into their story. But whereas if I've not, my character type, like what I present, it doesn't trigger those sorts of things. So that, and then there is this deeper possibility where there has been a lot of shifting of the attachment to self, and then there is the ability to hear it from a deeper level where it's beyond being human. There's a resonance that happens that's love, that's beyond the human level. But it often gets confused in the human level.
Okay, thank you so much. What are
With
you
pleasure, Rob. It was lovely speaking with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Lots of love.
Yeah, and send me the email and we can talk about the watching the video.
Yeah. I mean, just being able to speak it with you now is just so valuable. Even whether that happens or not is, doesn't matter. So,
Yeah.
thank you all the way
Thanks,
from
Rob.
New Zealand where COVID, we don't even, oh no, that thing we're not allowed to talk about doesn't even hardly even registers. So
Yeah, lucky you guys.
lots of
We're
love,
at the epicenter here in Europe, I think. No, actually India is now.
lots of love to you
Yeah.
guys. It's just ridiculous. We've been able to do like everything, anytime, anywhere. Now I think you can go to Australia and, everyone's just buying camper vans and traveling around the country because we spend like $2 billion a year in traveling overseas or something.
Wow.
So now our economy is going like gangbusters because everyone's buying, spa pools and doing up their houses and.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's just weird. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, I have to go for the toilet before I speak to the next person. Excuse me. Hey, Beth. Hi, Anu. Hi, Franz. Hi, Lucas. Hi, Isabel. Hi, Wolfgang. Hi, Thomas. Hi, Matthew. Hi, Donna. Hi, Nick. Hi, Adrian. Hi, Sarah. Malfred. Apana. I'm trying to think who I haven't spoken to recently. I can't. Yes, I don't think I've spoken to Sarah. Okay, so Sarah. Yes. I did not say people's name. Yes. I just give her a warning because you're behind. You are behind. Look at you looking at me. You're so beautiful. Just while I wait for Sarah to catch up, I'll just give you a look at the beauty. 1 second. Not me. Who's a beautiful girl? Who's a beautiful girl? Boo, 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 boo. Look, she's got a bald patch on her bottom. This can happen sometimes with older dogs. You see her bald patch? So instead of going bald on her head, she's gone bald on her bottom. She's not chewing it off. It looks like it's chewed off. But when she lived in Thailand, she used to have lots of bald patches, but now it just happened with age. Oh, yes. Are you showing off your ability to scratch your ear? Now you're going to lick your little paw. Have a good sniff of the... Oh, no. Licking of the vagina. No. And I've said the word vagina now, so I'm going to be suppressed. This video is going to be suppressed. We've had the C word, the V word, and we've actually... I'm sure I'm not even allowed to show that. It's like, will be considered dog... I can't say the next word because the algorithms will get that. Dog pee. Dog pee. Dog pee. It's not really dog pee. In English, dog pee means like dog pee pee, like wee wee, like caca. I don't mean that. I mean dog like the dirty stuff. Lisa, what are you saying? Nothing. I'm not saying anything. Okay. Here we go, Sarah.
Just turning off my YouTube here.
Yeah, sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Sarah.
Fantastic. Great.
Hey, Sarah. Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Suddenly a tiny bit nervous.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a little bit shocking. I can imagine, like, as soon as you hear, like, the Skype, like, the adrenaline kicks in, like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah, my heart's kind of pounding here a little bit. I was actually trying to ring you the last 2 weeks, so...
Oh, yeah?
Or not ring you, but I was leaving the call me note, so I wasn't sure if it's going to happen this week, so there's even more anticipation. Because there's 3 weeks of waiting, so it's very exciting. I'm actually just going to take a breath.
Yeah, sure. Takes time.
So, it's actually perfect that you answered tonight, because the question I had for the last 2 weeks is relating to the title of your talk tonight.
Yeah.
And if I can't even see it now because I've turned off YouTube, but it's something about death, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in the last year, there's been a lot of death and sickness in my life, and like friends, family members, and my cat is on his way out. He's actually here with me, and it's been quite a trip, a roller coaster of grief and uncertainty and shock and all kinds of stuff. And like, I know one of the comforts people give themselves or have with death is to believe that there's an afterlife and believe that the soul continues in some form. And I really struggled with that. I want to believe it because I can see how comforting it would be to imagine this singular soul somehow still in the ether, or somehow still like able to communicate with me and I with them. But my sense of it is that when a person dies, that and apologies if you've already kind of talked about this in your, I came on the talk a bit late tonight, so
it's okay. No, we didn't talk about this.
Okay, great. So yeah, my sense is that when a person dies, that their energy kind of dissipates back into the universe, like that physics law of energy cannot be created or destroyed, but only change shape. And my sense is that that's what happens, that energy just becomes kind of, which I suppose from a non-dual point of view never was disconnected or never was singular, was always one, that the material body drops away or whatever, decomposes, but the energy that it kind of enlivened the body, or whatever, lived in the body, or whatever way you want to say it, is oneness. What was always oneness and continues to be always oneness. But I struggle with the idea of this singular soul, with like, you know, like with past lives, for example, or and I long for it, because I long to connect with those people who've left and who are leaving, and even my cat, who sits on my lap when I meditate every morning, and it's such a deep connection I have with him in that sense, like such a spiritual, beautiful connection, pure connection. So yeah, I don't know how to form the question, but it's just wondering.
And I'll just take it as like a diving board and jump, like
cool.
Like just take bits of it and then jump.
Sure.
And see what happens. So it's so fascinating, this idea of a singular entity. Like, so it's like what we're living in is like really fascinating, because, right, so if I look back, this is just an example, and sorry to take it back to myself, but it's easier to talk about myself because I can remember myself. So if I take it back to like the last 10 years of speaking, or being on YouTube, so if I do that and I look at myself, I can see that there has been an evolution in the way that I see things, in the way that I speak, and in my body. Like my body, if you look at the pictures of me over the years, my body has physically changed. It's aged, but also like my face has kind of like become more womanly. Like I feel like my face changed from being more childlike to more womanly. My voice has changed. You could say like it's like the instruments, like say like YouTube and the fact that we use widescreen now most of the time. But there's also physical changes that I can see in myself. I hear differences in my voice. And I can see that my ideas have evolved. And I can see that my character has evolved and changed. And that's something that we don't often see, because we're not recording ourselves continuously to see that. Whereas I've been captured for the last 10 years, and maybe now the newer generation will always be captured so they can see their evolution. And you most probably, it's hard for your mind to see it because you feel like you've been a steady person maybe since you can remember, since you were like 5. But actually, if you had your whole life recorded, you'd see you've got basic tendencies that are arising, but you're actually evolving, like not just intellectually, but you're also evolving. Your conditioning is evolving, your way of seeing the world is evolving, your speaking is evolving, your intellect is evolving, your memory is evolving, and your physicality is evolving as well. So like I suppose you could also see that as well. Like if you think about the ideas in which you have now compared to the ideas 20 or 30 years ago. I don't know if you were alive 30 years ago, like 20 years ago. So you can see that there's been an evolution of you. So what is it then that is fundamentally you? If you're always changing, so if you were alive for 500 years or 1,000 years, what would be essentially you if you're something that's growing and changing? And if you recorded that growth and change? And the same with your cat, and the same with like family members that have died, which I would like to say, I'm sorry, like on a human level, it's also sad to lose people, and like sorry to hear that. But like if you look at it, like who is it that you are, and who is it that they are? So to me, the way in which I see life, but you've got to come to your own conclusion, your own feeling about it, is that like there are habits and conditions in this life, like in the play of things, that are constantly evolving, and sometimes they take on things for longer periods of time. So like right now, like to my right, I'm looking at a wooden chair, and originally, no, there is no originally of where that wooden chair came from. I can't find an original moment, but I can say at one time the tree, that chair was a tree. At one time that chair was water. At one time that chair was soil. At one time that chair was air. at one time that chair was rock. Like, so that chair that I'm looking at now has been in all different forms, but I just can't really detect that with my eyes and my current senses. And that's the same for you, and that's the same for me. Like, this body and this information that's arising from this body has been all different types of things. It's been the wind, it's been the sand, it's been the dust, it's been the soil, it's been the other animals, it's been leaves, it's been a tree, it's been water. Like, I think we're like 94 or 90 something % made of water. And also my ideas. Poetic. Yeah, it's really poetic. My ideas have also been the idea of enslaving women. My ideas have also been that of capturing and enslaving animals. My ideas have also been that of living off the land and like roaming the land. Like, I'm talking like before we started to domesticate animals. So, and my ideas have also been Einstein, and they've also been the person that worked in the fields on wheat. My ideas have also been Christianity, Islam, Sufism, which is Islam, but it's also been paganism. It's also been Greek mythology. And that's the same for you, and that's also the same for your loved ones. Like, we are built on everything that came before. In fact, there never is a solid you or me. There is this evolution of things. And when you really know that and see that, you see your cat and you see your family members who've died are actually here and present in everything that is expressed. It's just that that particular combination of things that you see them as is no longer present. So your brain, because of the way that we function as humans, and we need solid objects in order to relate with, to have conversation and to narrate our environment and our surroundings, you see them as something solid, which is important for us to be able to see things as solid in order to be able to keep to keep a continuous relationship. But it's not who they ever were. When you spoke to your family member that's died, so say if it was your dad, so when you spoke to your dad actually never heard you as the form in which you imagined him to be. So he maybe was an intelligent man, a wise man, an angry man, a slim man, a tall man, like all these different labels that you saw him as, that was never actually conscious or alive. That was a formation appearing, like the birds in the sky, like the clouds, like the tree. It was a formation that appeared, but it wasn't actually conscious. So that person that you saw him as the tall man, the right man, the good man, wasn't ever actually conscious or alive. But we imagined that person to be conscious and alive. There was a consciousness that was perceiving all those dynamics and then maybe identifying with those dynamics. And that consciousness, which was your dad, is actually still here and all around you, perceiving. So every time you want to know your dad, you just look to presence, to that consciousness which is already here and innately in all objects. And then we can describe your dad as a particular accumulation of things, like I can call this chair a chair, and you can call him dad, and you can call him a name. And that's so beautiful. That's part of being human, but that wasn't actually ever a reality. That was something that we invented in words and we invented in our culture in order to survive better. That was never who he was. Before we learnt to speak as humans, you would have never seen your dad as an idea. You wouldn't have known that. You wouldn't have known he was a good man or a bad man or a right man or a tall man or a leader, because you wouldn't know those words. You'd have seen him as what is, which is mystery, which is undefinable, which is watching, which is conscious.
And he would have seen, well, he wouldn't have seen me that way because he was already a person, but like it's the same in him in a way.
Yeah.
Like, as in, I'm the same. Like, you're describing my father, and I'm thinking that's how he also experiences me in that way.
As
He's
an
actually
idea.
he's still alive, but he has dementia now.
Oh yeah.
He's close to the end too, but it looks good. Yeah, it's this. Like, my mind's like kind of blown by what you're saying in a way.
Yeah.
And I do get a sense, like, as I mentioned, I meditate, and that helps me.
Yeah.
It helps me connect with the source of my being, or whatever way you want to say, and then a sense of a collective, like the source, you could say, I suppose,
Yeah.
of everything. And then in that space, I don't, the grief doesn't touch me in a way. It's kind of, it feels like outside of that or something.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I know it's inside that, but it feels, it just doesn't feel like it's there, because I just feel wholeness, and I get a sense of, like, my young nephew died, and I get a sense of his kind of, his intactness in that space, like that he's still totally, I don't want to say present, but still with us, I guess.
Yeah.
For example. So,
yeah, that's it. That's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this kind of story of the person, when I'm in that sort of realm, and of time and physicality, there's no way around not feeling the grief of the loss.
Yeah, physiologically, it's very important, enlightened or non-enlightened, that your body goes through grief. So say if we took it to, like, Khaleesi, who I don't think has the ability to project onto me an idea. Like, to me, my dog is enlightened. Like, she doesn't have the ability to project onto me like an idea of Lisa. But if I were to die and to leave her, she would look for me, and she will go through a physiological loss of pining for me. And it's through time and through different experiences which will help her to heal from that and to bond with somebody else, or to bond with another dog, another person. But there has to be that physiological release. Like, our brain has to adjust to me, who I've been with her for nearly 9 years now, has to deal with that object, that person, that bond, that intimacy no longer being there. And that's a physiological thing. And that's not like that's something, like, so your body has to go through the process of grieving that loss. And it's more intense for the people that you're around a lot more and had a longer span of relationship with.
Yeah, and I don't want to cheat myself out of that, because like, I did try to do a kind of spiritual bypass. I went to India and did, like, a kind of retreat, and it was beautiful, and it was the right thing to do at that time. But then I came back and I realized I was kind of in this bliss state in a way, and I kind of realized that I still needed to face the grief and feel and cry, and like that there was part of me kind of maybe running away from that in a way. But I mean, it's all okay in the end of the day, I suppose. But it's just it was good for me to recognize that, like, I hadn't really known about this phenomenon called spiritual bypass until I started doing it, and then kind of came up short, like, realized I wasn't actually enlightened or as whatever enlightened as I thought I was, because I had, you know, some beautiful experiences over there, and
for sure,
but it didn't last, you know, or like the bliss states don't last.
No, they don't. They come and go. And you can have these awakenings and these energetic shifts and be spiritually bypassing. Like, it's two different worlds in a way. It's like like, you have these awakenings to who you truly are, and that's really beautiful, and that penetrates something very deep. But it doesn't, that won't heal your body going through a physiological reaction to somebody leaving your life. So on the human level, I don't know so much about grief, but I think like the way it's meant to go is that you're meant to like grieve and then rebuild and grieve and rebuild and alternate for a period of that, grieving the loss of something and then rebuilding. So it's like not spending all your time in rebuilding and not spending all your time in grieving. It's like this oscillation. It's almost like the oscillation that you have with trauma. You know, when you're coming to grips with the trauma in your body, you have to like oscillate between the pain of that trauma, but then coming out of it and rebalancing that trauma. You know, like not getting stuck in it or not avoiding it completely.
Yeah.
Like it's this and that maybe is like I don't want to make any summaries, but how we have to deal with a lot of things. It's like letting it in bit by bit. So you're letting it in and then you're transforming into something else. Because it's something in the body. It's something, you know, if your family is all in, like if you're an animal and your whole tribe or your whole pack is annihilated, then that dog has to then Khaleesi just barked at me and gave me a fright. Like that. It was so perfect timing. That the dog has to it has to rebuild its survival technique, and it also has to deal with all those attachments being lost, that intimacy being lost, and that safety and that security being lost. So it's like these two, otherwise it will die. Like if it doesn't like rebuild a new way to survive, but also deal with that pining for those others. If it doesn't integrate into its life, then I'd most probably die.
Yeah. I feel like it's been a kind of well, obviously, like this last year with lockdowns and everything, there's been a lot more time to think and feel and be with ourselves, even when we don't want to.
Yeah.
Or have a desire to kind of run away from stuff like grief. But I get a real sense of that oscillation you're talking about in just this time that I've been going through, and it's exactly like you say. It's like, you know, I still have to get up and have breakfast in the morning, or you know, exercise and do my work and all those things, but at the same time give space and respect the emotional kind of upheaval that's going on, and try and keep the two in balance and not full. Like there's been moments where I feel like, I'm getting, you know, kind of self-indulgent, maybe at times I am, and then I kind of have to pull myself out, and you know, and it's actually lovely sometimes to be pulled into the like real world of objects and doing the laundry or just simple tasks. I find really kind of grounding. But I guess, you know, everybody has a different way of viewing life and death, and the story, like the thing I sometimes, you know, because I want to be there for my family and kind of help them with their grief, and like talk about my nephew, for example, in a way that is comforting. But I don't have that sense of, like what I was saying about the individual soul. But I think the way you've described it earlier, and the stuff I was saying about when I meditate is all comforting. And maybe I don't need to believe in this individual soul as such to kind of process.
And also, you don't need to like not believe in it either. Like, so when people talk to me about ghosts or like somebody dying and like their energy still being around, like, I'm really not opposed to that. I know that sounds really crazy after everything I've just said. Like I kind of like, so when I've experienced people dying, or friends of mine have experienced people dying, I can get into what they say. Like they can kind of feel that energy still around or not around, and like, and I'm really not opposed to that, even though I completely don't believe in independent souls. So it's also that life is so mysterious, like, and it's just really what you feel in the moment and what really resonates to be true with you or not.
suppose because ultimately, like what we tell ourselves are stories, and they have their place, but the ultimate truth is probably beyond words or stories. And if I have time to ask, just in relation to, say, Hinduism that talks about past lives, what would a kind of non-dual perspective be on past life? Yeah.
So I don't know what the non-dual perspective, like consensus perspective on it would be, because non-dualism has like changed so much. The fundamental truth of it is the same, but like the expression of it has changed so much in the last 50 years since it's come over to the West. But my perspective on past lives is that like in the human world, there is always going to be past lives, because we're not separate from the objects which came before. But it's just not somebody's, it's just not a personal past life. That's the hard thing. So when I was in Buddhism, like the Buddhist organization, they taught me that there is rebirth. So there is the rebirth of energies and dynamics, but it doesn't belong to a particular person. There's not like a particular person that has these new lives or these different lives. But that's so confusing to imagine. But to me, that really resonates with me, and that really makes sense. So there is rebirth, but it's not anybody's rebirth.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I get it in a way, and then I don't. But I suppose that's just the mind. It wants to get things that it can't sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Like, there's definitely a mystery to all this, and we can't really understand. But I do, like, sometimes when you've talked about some of this kind of stuff, you've talked about and apologies for paraphrasing because I'm not going to get it right, but sort of this sense of family line, say, having a past life. So say like my great grandmother, like she kind of lives in me even though I never knew her. So her, in a way, she is my past life.
Yeah, totally.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So and that's more tangible to mine because obviously it's just, there's a physical connection.
Yeah.
But
and even science, like Western science, like talks about this in a way. I mean, like it talks about genetics, but just like a particular experiment that always comes to mind is that they traumatized this female rat. Then they impregnated her. They traumatized her, say, with a pencil. So every time the rat saw a pencil, it like freaked out. And then they got her pregnant, and then she gave birth. And as soon as the babies saw the pencil, they were all terrified without being traumatized by it in this life.
Wow.
So it is like we are carrying not only the genetic makeup of all our ancestors, we are actually carrying their emotional responses as well. Their traumas, like all of that is carried in our DNA, which is really logical that it would be carried, our trauma, because if our parents were traumatized by something, then it's more than likely that we need to be precautious of that trauma in this life. And when you really begin to make it like work out like what that sense of I is, you'll notice that it's all habits and conditions. So habits which are genetic, and conditions which are in this life. So like we get new conditions, we are formed, so our schooling, our parenting, our friends will also aid us to change and evolve in certain ways. But then we also have the genetics and the information from our ancestors. And if we, like what's so beautiful about that, like if we look back at like the creation of humans, like eventually we can like source it back to the two original humans. So we all came from like the same like information. Like it'd be really amazing if like we all tested our like DNA to see like how much we're related. Like so I wouldn't test mine because I don't trust the companies that do it. But I tested Khaleesi's because I knew that she wasn't a domesticated dog, and I wanted to find out her percentage of not being a domesticated dog genetically. And so on this like app, I'm still like I pay, it was quite expensive and I pay for it. And on the app, you can see like all her relations. So she doesn't actually have that many relations, but you can see like a dog and how far it's related to somebody and like all its different characteristics, its behaviors, the color that it will be. Like it's really amazing like what they can predict from just a swab of their spit. I think that was all I had to do to give them. But she doesn't have very many relations because she's not a domesticated dog. So not many people that own dogs like her, like own dogs like her. Firstly, like most of them are running around free in Asia. And then if they do own one, it's unlikely they'll pay 200 or 250 euros to get the DNA tested. Like that would be quite expensive in Thailand to do that. So she doesn't have many ancestors or relatives on there currently. But if I had like a Labrador or a Doberman or something, a popular dog breed, then you'd be able to like match it up with all these like relations. And they do it in percentage, like how much percent it's related to this dog, like all over the world. You could like map it. It would be so amazing. And they're doing that with humans now, but just you don't know who the companies are. That
it does sound a little bit scary. Like what are they doing with the info and what and what I don't know why. Well, I suppose it is fascinating to think that we are ultimately all connected and we are like even on a physical. So it's not not just the idea of oneness or the kind of invisibility of oneness, but the physical, tangible realm of it, which of course my mind way prefers because it's in control. And that's the thing with death. There's like it's just this out of control mess.
Totally.
Which is beautiful too, of course, but not what the mind likes.
Beyond our grasp and our comprehension. Nice. Oh, well, thanks for calling in, Sarah. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And sorry to hear about all your losses.
Oh,
it's painful to go through.
Yeah. Well, it's been a big growing period as well. So it's got its good side too, I guess, in that way.
Yeah. Nice.
But yes, thank you so much for that. I really
lovely to speak with you.
That.
Yeah. I send you lots of love.
Thank you. Likewise. Take care.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Nice. That was lovely to speak with Rob and with Sarah tonight. These are two names that I feel comfortable reproducing, saying again. Normally I'm like, don't say their name again. Now I've laid that out. How bad my dyslexia is. Okay, my loves, I will go now because I can hear my partner cooking my pizza. We have pizza on Sundays after my talk. I'm all excited to get fed. Okay, and I wish you everything. Like I really wish you everything. I wish you a beautiful week, a beautiful day, and I wish you everything. Lots of love.